podcast because he wears he wears many hats, I'm sure, but two of them. We will get to both of them. We will get to the Hurricanes in a minute, but as we bring in Al Hood from Tar Heel Blog, at Al B. Hood on Twitter, we're going to start with the Tar Heels. And I know you wrote the winners, losers, and whatever the other category was piece on Tar Heel Blog. There were winners? Really?
Well, listen, I mean, the article is winners, losers, and honorable mentions, so
Yeah.
I will be. And I debated going sarcastic with it, but from an objective standpoint, and it kind of made the Mack Brown discussion hurt even more, if you think about it. The offense for Carolina was really, really good. Like, Criswell threw for more yards than Drake May did at least all season last year. The offense scored 50 points. Like, if you told me that Criswell passed for 475 yards, that Hampton ran for 130 yards, that Carolina scored 50 points, I'm going to tell you, oh yeah, they won. That's the best the offense looked all day. They didn't score enough points the whole game to beat JMU in the first half.
Right.
But it's, it's silver lining. Like, it is the one thing to be like, quarterback was a huge question for the Tar Heels going into the year, and third try is apparently a charm. Criswell just looks good, and it's hard to blame the loss on Saturday on him. So,
I mean, they turned it over 5 times a team. I will say this:
it's hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard. We could discuss the turnovers and everything along those lines. Like, once things start going downhill for JMU and you start forcing things, it becomes easier to defend and et cetera. The offensive line played a huge role in that too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I was once played in a golf tournament and made about a 30-foot putt for a 15 on the first hole. So when somebody asked me, how did you make a 15? I said, I made a 30-footer. And
exactly.
So that's let's move on because I do want to dig into the emotions of Mack Brown after the game in the locker room to his own team, in which reports said that he said if we think that I'm not the person to turn for this situation, then I will step aside. Players implored him not to. And then reports had him actually telling administrators that he was going to step down, and then he went back on it. He's clearly emotional. Getting 70 put on you by JMU, and not even a vintage JMU team, will certainly do that to you. What is your read on where we are with Mack?
I think that he did a really big amount of walking back of that yesterday at his press conference.
Yep.
I'm willing to concede to him that it wasn't so much the idea that at that exact moment he wanted to leave, that it was one of those coaches' tropes that you use to try to get the players to buy into you because you feel like anything else you've tried just isn't going to work. But also, clearly there was something about the way he said it to where the reporting by Inside Carolina was such that they reported it the way that they did. Someone inside the locker room felt that it was something that needed to get out to the point to where Inside Carolina would report it. So it feels as if there is definitely some undercurrents going on here to where, I mean, we knew when he was fired, he was not going to be a long-term solution for Carolina. At least we thought that he wasn't going to be a long-term solution for Carolina. But it's clear that just the game itself and the fact that the team just, as you mentioned earlier, just looked like they hadn't done anything for the past week. They just had everything just hung up on them, and they just failed to show up, period. It would make any coach sit there and, at least for a second, wonder, are they even listening to me anymore?
Right.
And once you start questioning that, then it is fair to say, is it time for a new voice out here? Is it time for a new voice to start speaking to these kids?
Al Hood from SB Nation Tar Heel blog joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. None of us expected the Mack Brown era to go on forever. This is year 6. We probably didn't think it would get. I didn't think it would get to this point. I thought he was a let's get a reset and then find somebody else based on the way last season went. When you have the number 3 pick in the draft in Drake May coming back, a legit Heisman Trophy candidate at the start of the season, it obviously didn't go well. And my read was that Mack was kind of tired of it all. I thought last year would be it. When Drake walked out the door, Mack was going to follow him to the draft and beyond, and that would be it. And then Mack would go do TV or go enjoy his, well-earned retirement with Sally, and that we'd be done. But he came back. I'm not sure he doesn't wonder if that would have been the better decision to actually follow Drake out the door. I said this before. I'll be surprised if this isn't his last year. And I have no inside information at all. What is your read on it?
My read on it with Mack is that it's a little bit simpler than that. He wants to write his own ending. Didn't end well for him in Texas. And even though he left, it wasn't all the way voluntary. So there was a lot of ways of him coming back to Carolina to try to rewrite the story and rewrite the ending to show that he still had it and he still could be a successful coach. And he wanted to leave on an up note. So to your point, there is a validity in the idea that if the last season had gone and if it hadn't ended in the dumpster fire that it did, if it had ended well, and it ended at the very least similarly to how 2022 ended, at least with an ACC championship game run, he probably could have justified in his mind of, okay, I've got the number 3 quarterback. I got Carolina to back-to-back ACC championship games. He was in the Heisman conversation. I'm ending this on my own terms. Instead, much like it did to Texas, kind of took a left turn.
Yeah.
Things just continued to go downhill. And if he left, it would not be on his terms. It would not be the good look. I mean, all coaches have egos. Some are bigger than others, but his motivation here is clearly he wants to end it and leave his name to where it's a good note. It's on. He wants it to be remembered as getting Carolina back into the place to where it is. So if he can follow up this year and it be a year when there weren't as many expectations, maybe this is the year where he at least can at least leave on his own terms, his own good terms. But then you have a game like this Saturday and you wonder, does that make him say, okay, I'm done trying to do this again? Or does that just make him dig in his heels even more to say, okay, no, we're going to keep trying until I can actually have a good season I can hang my hat on.
The interesting thing for me is that, and Al Hood is joining us from Tar Heel blog, SB Nation. We're going to get to his other website with SB Nation in a second, is that he tried to write his own exit at Texas and it was written for him. And it seems to me like that's going to happen here too, because this season is certainly not going to end well. And I don't know that the prospects for a turnaround are next year too. And I can't believe that the university, regardless of how many high dollar boosters are in Mack's, corner, I just don't see anybody really signing up for this anymore.
Just, you would think so. And I mean, the most of us that write for Tar Heel blog, I encourage anybody who's curious about where we as the whole site stands. You read my column where I called out Mack, but it was building on what our site editor and site assistant editor, Brandon Anderson, both wrote on Sunday following the loss. Brandon wrote about it in his 3 Things Learned. Tanya had a great just post period about Mack and his comments in the locker room. I mean, we're all frustrated at this point.
Right.
The rank and file fan base is frustrated. But it always comes down to a dollar and cents. And you say it's about the boosters. You go back to when Carolina finally cut bait with Larry Fedora. It wasn't necessarily that the boosters had abandoned him. It was when the stands started getting empty. It's when season tickets just completely dried up. It's when fans just lost hope. And unfortunately, that's going to kind of be what it takes for that sort of move to happen at Carolina. And, Mack is much better at the political game and the booster game than Larry Fedora was.
Oh, yeah. Fedora didn't want to play it, and they didn't even want to recruit the state.
Right. And Mack is so good at that. And it's honestly why he's being given a long leash to try to write his own exit. You know what? And all the silver linings aside, and I know it sounds like I'm trying to talk that way, Carolina still hasn't played an ACC game yet.
Right.
You talked about the importance of the Duke game this weekend.
Huge.
And, based on how both teams are looking going into the game, you would think that Duke, I haven't looked at the lines yet. I would imagine Duke is coming in as a favorite. You've got the home and
3 points.
And how both teams, thank you, how they're coming into it. But, you've also got Mack Brown's history with Manny Diaz, and Manny does not exactly have a great record against him. As you said, Mack has the ability to get players up for the Duke game. Remember, the last good win Carolina had last year was against Duke.
It's their Super Bowl, really.
On the field. Yeah. I was at that game, and it felt great. Sometimes a game like this past weekend can do the thing that you need to snap kids awake. And if they turn around and throttle Duke 28-3, which I don't think will happen, but if they do, again, tenor changes. And then you look at the rest of the ACC schedule and their ACC schedule, and you say, you know what, it's 8-4, maybe even 9-3 is still absolutely possible. So
yeah,
I don't think it'll happen because of the way they showed up, but it is possible.
The team we watched Saturday probably doesn't have 9 wins in them, but I don't anticipate that exact team showing up again. All right, we spent too much time on North Carolina football, and basically, if you judge it based on allowing 70 points, anything more than one question was probably too much. But we've got like 60 seconds left, so we'll flip to Canes country now, where you can also read Al Hood stuff at Al B Hood. All right, so not a lot of guys, not a lot of firepower in the lineup tonight. Drury and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Jack Drury, Jesperi Kotkaniemi are both going to center top 2 lines. But that kid line of Felix Ungersor and Bradley Nadeau, Jackson Blake, they are going to be featured. So what are you going to be staring at your laptop tonight? Because that's really where where you can watch it. What are you going to be looking for?
Looking to see if one or more of those prospects, and who knows who, but if one or more of those prospects basically has a 2021 Seth Jarvis type preseason. I mean, that's essentially it. The last couple of years, the Canes have not really had the opportunity for someone who was a prospect or who we expected to be playing in the minors to make the jump and get the opportunity to play on opening night. So everything has been set. Rosters have been set. There is absolutely the opportunity for someone to jump up to make such a strong impression to where they may have thought they'd been starting the year out in Chicago, or overseas, but in the end, they're going to be wearing a sweater on opening night. That's my big thing. Also, KK underrated. He stayed on. The team decided to hold on to him. They're showing faith in him. He's got to step up.
Yep.
He's got to step up this year with the losses and everywhere else. He's got to play a bit. He's got to start earning the contract that they essentially placed into him.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I think Kotkaniemi and Jack Drury they're both going to be in the lineup. Barring injury, they're both being announced on night one against Tampa here in Raleigh on the 11th of October. But who plays with who is or whom will be determined, I think, by how they play in the preseason. Although, and I've said this before, I think Kotkaniemi definitely has pole position to play with Natchez, and I still think Svechnikov on that line to start the season. I think you want to give KK 2 elite wingers, Aho, Jarvis, and throw another guy out there would probably end up being a pretty good top line anyway. Al Hood at Al B Hood on Twitter. My friend, I will talk to you very soon. Thank you.
Sounds good, Adam. Thank you.